Hello, and welcome to Inside Flair, which stands for Flourish in Life Through Art and Resources for Endometriosis. I am your host, Priscilla, the founder, and today we're going to talk about all things art and flair. So, let's get started. I am coming from the background as an artist myself and art teacher. And when I thought about flair and what I wanted it to look like, I wanted to make sure that there was not only art classes for people to take, but a space. Now, in the beginning, and I shared in my stories before I even launched any of this, that I wanted so badly to host an art show that would exhibit artists who struggle with the disease and highlight their artwork as a way to spread awareness. Now, I was working really hard to meet the deadline of a grant in my area. I'm located in upstate New York and have it in a gallery, and I'm going through this whole process, and I'm like, okay, this isn't enough. And after meeting with a couple of people, it's like, okay, we were limiting the amount of reach, right? So a component I already had, right, before deciding, okay, this show needs to be virtual, international. I already had in mind the built-in component of a virtual gallery. Now, that's already in the works, it's developed. I've got to clean it up more. But I've decided that this is where we're going to hold this inaugural art exhibition, illuminating endometriosis. So, but it's important that I know, and that's why, again, I'm coming on here to kind of try and like highlight all the spots where things are happening and working art wise, is that this virtual gallery, once it's complete and I can just launch it and you can go on and look around, I will have rotating shows. So I talked about on a previous episode the workshops that you can take part in should you decide to become a part of the community that way. And say you take a class on watercolor, and the handful of people in that workshop at the end, their final works will go into a smaller exhibit. So you have like kind of like a baby show in there in the virtual gallery. So while we're going along this year, collaborating through these multiple different art projects, there will be living shows in our virtual gallery on the website, as well as, again, kind of filing all the details for this end goal, big goal, baby. Now, the other components we have, so on top of the virtual gallery and the end of the year art show, I'm saying end of the year, is the opportunity to be able to be featured on the Instagram page. So that's like an artist feature that would have like a smaller version of your story with images of yourself, or whatever you feel comfortable sharing with your artwork. So as a new artist, say you've been actively making work for a while and you find flair and you're inspired to make art um, in, inspired by your journey with endometriosis, and that's the work you want to share. Maybe you have a diagnosis with endo and you just want to share the work that you have, even if it's, whatever series you're working on, painting, sculpture, whatnot. We want to showcase you just as you are. And the other option is to be featured very similarly, just that way, but on the Substack. So we can share photos of your work that way. You can write in an article. So it's as artists being featured that under this umbrella of art, I'm saying, right? Because you can choose to be a part of Flair in another way. But when it comes to art, I want to make sure that artists know, okay, there are multiple different ways I can get my work out there. And those are just a few opportunities and ways that you can do that. So, in addition to that, I want to make it also known that for the traveling art and photo project Blaze, there's more information about that on the website, on the Instagram, and it has its own episode here on the podcast. This is an opportunity to be a part of an art project. The project itself is art in many ways, and then in the end, the fabric that is traveling will also be on display. So when it comes to art and flair, it's important that I highlight the significance of coming into the art world, if you don't feel that you're a part of it already, in a non-intimidating way. Now, I've had this conversation with multiple people because it's something that grinds my gears. Is how many people I've seen in my lifetime turned away from art, the art world, I say. This is to be different from making. People would disagree, but just to give you an example of where I'm coming from. Because of those who have their nose stuck so high up in the air. That idea that there's this exclusivity and like you need to kind of like there's others on the outside. And that can make people feel like crap. I can tell you from my experience, especially really young, trying to get into shows, submitting my work, applying, just the feeling of, not being accepted, especially, right, like paying money, whether it's for the submission fee or getting a cut once your work was accepted and on display and in the gallery, and just all this part of the culture that are negative things that can turn people away from art. In Flair here, I am trying to, not trying to, I'm going to, we are going to knock that wall down. Knock it down and open up a way, clear a path, blaze a path for people with endometriosis and chronic illness to come in, because art is for everybody, and I think it's not taught that enough. And there's the saying too that we're all born artists as children, and it's kind of beaten out of us. Flair exists to reverse that. And like I said, I want to make that clear and make sure that's emphasized in the courses, in the exhibits, on and on, such and so forth. As far as art goes so that's education. Oh, I would love to, and I've been kind of brainstorming about this. Haven't even shared it with anyone yet, actually. Just kind of figuring it out as I'm talking here. Is resources on art education. I think that would be cool to kind of slide in our resources library, so we kind of trickle that avenue as well, right? So maybe you are inspired to become an art teacher and you want to figure out how to do that. We can have a little spot in the library for that. I think that would be amazing. So yes, when it comes to art and flair, you've got spaces to show yourself, you have classes to learn. We have so many different ways to tell your story, and I hope that I've made it clear along all these other episodes and everywhere that flair exists on the internet is you are welcome, so welcome to be a part of building flair, what that looks like. I've mentioned before that I feel like I've kind of got a really good team right now as far as leadership and work behind the scenes. But moving forward, once we are officially a nonprofit and we can start these fundraisers, or if you have ideas, maybe you want to come on the podcast and you want to share your ideas, that would be awesome. Like I said, I just want to invite more of you, anyone out there, into the Flair community and start connecting, start telling your stories, and make this invisible illness visible, because that's what art is. Art tells a story. Art is the universal language. It is why I decided to get my master's in learning English, because my students at the time, Syracuse was a big immigrant and refugee hub. The ones that could not speak English, they were the ones who loved art. And I'm telling you, and I could ramble on this forever, but art is going to be an amazing way for you to start to heal. If you haven't got a itch for it yet, you will. Stay here, I promise. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to end it and just say I am really, really glad if you made it this far. Welcome. Keep creating, keep healing. Talk soon.